What happens when 60 years of family rule meets the will of an entire nation? When one dynasty's grip on power becomes the law of the land and calls for democracy are answered with bullets. Welcome to Togo in 2025, where the Gnassingbe family's latest power grab has thrown the country into deadly chaos and exposed Africa's longest-running political dynasty. According to reports from Amnesty International and civil society groups, the last week of June 2025 saw Togo's capital, Lomé, erupt in some of the most intense anti-government protests in years. Demonstrators took to the streets not just over economic hardship, but in outrage against sweeping constitutional changes passed without public input that critics worldwide call a constitutional coup. The price? At least 7 lives lost, dozens injured, and more than 60 people arrested in just 3 days of bloodshed. But this crisis is the culmination of 6 decades of authoritarian rule. The Gnassingbe dynasty began in 1967 when Gnassingbe Ayadema seized power in a military coup. When he died in 2005, his son Faure immediately took control, making this Africa's longest-running family dictatorship. For nearly 60 years, Togolese hopes for genuine democracy have been repeatedly crushed through military force, constitutional manipulation, and elections widely dismissed as fraudulent by Human Rights Watch and international observers. In March 2024, the ruling UNIR party, controlling 108 out of 113 parliamentary seats, pushed through constitutional amendments behind closed doors. There was no public debate, no referendum, no democratic process. The reforms extended presidential terms from 5 to 6 years and capped terms at 1. But here's the catch. Gnassingbe's nearly 2 decades in power won't count toward this limit. Even more controversial, real power shifted to a new position above the presidency, the President of the Council of Ministers, with no term limits. In May 2025, guess who appointed himself to this powerful new role? Faure Gnassingbé. As civil society groups like Don't Touch My Constitution and international observers pointed out, this wasn't just about new laws. It was about legalizing indefinite one-man rule, effectively closing the door to peaceful change forever. When Togolese citizens flooded the streets starting June 26th, their protests were met with batons, tear gas, and live ammunition. Amnesty International confirmed at least 3 deaths during the first 3 days, including 2 teenagers found dead in a lagoon after violent clashes with security forces. Local civil society groups report the total death toll has reached 7 people, with bodies discovered in multiple locations around Lomé. While the government remains silent on investigations, witnesses and rights groups allege the systematic use of brutal force by both uniformed police and plainclothes militias. Togo's government, meanwhile, blamed foreign-based actors and disinformation for the unrest, and promised to prosecute protest organizers, including those living abroad. Public gatherings have been banned since 2022, supposedly after an attack at Lomé's main market. But rights monitors suggest that this blanket ban is just another tool for crushing dissent. Behind the headlines, a determined resistance is growing. Civil society coalitions, human rights groups, opposition politicians, church leaders, and especially youth activists are risking arrest and torture for the chance at a better future. Their demands are simple: end the violence, restore direct elections, respect basic freedoms, and release political prisoners. But as long as the government responds with denial and repression, the standoff will only intensify. So where is the rest of Africa, or the world? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Regional bodies like ECOWAS and the African Union, while often quick to speak of democracy, have so far failed to act decisively. Even as the ECOWAS Court of Justice repeatedly condemns Togo for human rights violations, Faure Gnassingbé remains a key mediator in West African diplomacy. The silence or outright engagement of international partners risks legitimizing a system built on fear and impunity. The stakes go far beyond Togo. If the world allows this constitutional coup to stand, it sets a precedent for leaders across Africa to change the rules and cling to power for life, no matter the cost to democracy or human rights. If you believe the voices of ordinary people matter, and that no leader should rule forever, let's make sure the world is watching. Subscribe for more deep dives on Africa's political struggles and share your thoughts. Do you think regional organizations like ECOWAS should intervene more forcefully in Togo, or does change have to come from within? Drop your answer in the comments below. If you want to catch up on political news from across Africa, check out the link in the description to our blog, The African Reset. Thank you for watching. Stay informed and stay engaged.